Hello everyone and welcome back to Fighting Fantasy. This is book 7, The Island of the Lizard King. Um, let's jump right in. As usual, we are going to play on Hardcore Hero difficulty. And now it is really going to be crucial that I roll a full set of maximum rolls, so I roll a perfect character basically. So this might take a few retries. I might cut this part out if it takes too long. This is going to be once again a 100% playthrough. This is a book with a lot of additional or optional content. So what's going to happen is that I'm going to take every path and option except for two types. So first of all, I'm not going to use anything that will lower our skill level, because our skill as usual starts out at 10 and this is barely enough for the survival. So there are a lot of encounters or events that can lower the skill level, and yeah, if I did that, then I'd say that this playthrough would be literally impossible. So obviously we're not going to do that. Also, I'm not going to obtain any cursed items. There are quite a few cursed items on this island, and so I'm not going to get any of those. The problem with cursed items is that even the ones that do not lower the skill level, some do, still are quite detrimental all throughout the game book. So they come back later on and bite you for you know, if you picked up a cursed item, then later on you might have an unfavorable encounter. Other than that, I'm going to go through every the longest path available, so possible, and the most perilous as well. And if there is a dead end or an event that would make me lose luck point, for instance, or stamina points, I'll take it. There is also a small, very short encounter or event that takes one of your items randomly away. I'm not going to take it because the item might be actually needed to win, so it's a total random. So obviously we are not going to take that. Other than that, we're going to take everything, and that includes actually trading off our provisions at the very beginning, or relatively at the beginning of the game book. So we are going to go through this game book without ever consuming provisions. There is no way to obtain more provisions in the book itself. We will of course have a lot of opportunities to regain stamina points, so obviously we're not going to go through it with 24 points. But the stamina is off the options menu, and that's it. So it's going to be quite a complete playthrough. Thank you for joining me, and since this might take quite a while, I'm going to make a cut of the video here and be right back with the perfect character rolled. Alright, that went actually faster than expected. Now we must choose a potion to take with us. And believe it or not, you know, for this adventure we are going to take a potion of strength. Luck is relatively plentiful to come by. We're also going to have to roll against the luck a lot. So this book has a lot of stat checks for luck for some reason. Much fewer against skill check attributes, the skill attribute. So we are going to actually lose a lot of luck points, but also regain a lot of them. This should be sufficient. Our starting 12 points should be sufficient. And on the other hand, we are going to have to battle a lot, and we might, you know, we might get very close to dying. So a potion of strength basically means that we, instead of having 24 stamina points, we get practically 40 plus. I'm going to use it when we get really weak and close to dying. Also, I don't want to reroll this, so once again I'm going to save at the very first entry in the book. Now let's take a look at our adventurer's equipment. We begin our adventure with a sword, leather armor, and a backpack with space for provisions. 3 units of provisions as usual. We are playing on hardcore hero difficulty. And if you've seen the my previous game book playthrough, then you will notice that I haven't changed the character portrait. That's because in my mind he's the same guy. So you're going to see in the introductory text that we are going to probably play as the same person that completed the Trial of Champions in Death Trap Dungeon. We don't start out with a shield. There is no way to get a shield in this game book, as far as I know, if I remember correctly. We will pick up equipment, obviously, so there is more stuff to be found on the island. It's quite an interesting adventure, so we are going to see a lot of various environments, creatures, peoples even, and obviously we are going to find a lot of loot as usual. Alright? May the luck of the gods go with us. And here's the introductory text. Oyster Bay is a quiet fishing village some 60 miles down the coast from the notorious Port Blacksand. Because it is at the end of a long peninsula reached only by a steep and winding path, the fisherfolk are left to lead a simple but content life, away from the monsters and sorcery of the hinterland. Journeying south from Fang, we decide that we could do with a few days' rest, and knowing of no more peaceful place than Oyster Bay, we urge our horse towards the coast. Besides, an old adventuring friend of ours called Mungo lives there now, and it has been years since we last saw him. 2 days later, we arrive at the edge of the cliffs overlooking Oyster Bay. And I'll make a pause right here, so quick note. Port Blacksand is mentioned, the setting for book number 5, City of Thieves, and if you recall, if you have good memory, then the hero of book 6 actually crossed Port Blacksand. It's clear that it was not the same, but it's very strongly hinted it's not the same hero, but he crossed Port Blacksand to reach Fang, and the very end of the previous adventure was, Fang. The setting, the overarching setting or the frame of the previous book was the village of Fang, and it ended in this village. So I'm quite positive that this is the same character, and it seems that we have spent our money on a horse practically, and maybe hid the rest of the gold somewhere, because we won a lot of gold. Anyway, we start out with no gold pieces. There is no gold in this gold in the sense of gold coins. There is no currency in this adventure. So anyway, 2 days later we arrive at the edge of the cliffs overlooking Oyster Bay. It is a beautiful sunny morning and everything looks tranquil below. Nothing seems to have changed. The cluster of stone cottages nestles between the foot of the cliffs and the jetty, where a dozen fishing boats lie at anchor. We jump off our horse and walk it down the winding path to the village. The first people we see are a group of crying villagers. As we approach them, several of them step out of a cottage and run towards us. One of the 4 is our old friend Mungo. His weather-beaten face is full of anger. He looks surprised to see us, but wastes no time with words of welcome. He recounts the sad events that have befallen the village. Having no gold or material wealth, the people of Oyster Bay thought themselves safe from raiders attacking their village. But several weeks ago, while most of the men were out at sea, the lizard men of Fire Island landed their boats in Oyster Bay and kidnapped several young villagers. Mungo believes that they are now enslaved on Fire Island and working in chain gangs in the gold mines. Since the kidnapping, 2 people were left to guard the village, while the rest went out to fish. Despite this, the lizard man attacked again this very morning, overpowering the guards and taking away more villagers. Mungo tells us that he is about to set sail for Fire Island alone because the other fishermen are too scared to set foot on the island. He stares at us in silence until we smile and say that we will aid him in his quest. He slaps us on the back and shakes our hand in gratitude. For the moment, the poor fishing folk forget their grief and crowd around us, eager to thank us. Mungo then invites us to dine with him and rest a while, as the voyage to Fire Island will take several hours. Over a delicious feast of boiled lobster and salad, we discuss our plans. Alright? So if you recall, we are not really an adventurer type, but we probably knew this old guy from somewhere, and now that we just arrived from the Death Trap dungeon, probably patched up. I guess that's also where part of the money went, to to heal us back up to full strength. We are now brave and confident enough to accept such a quest, such a challenge, especially since we are going on a little party with this experienced Mungo guy. So that sounds acceptable. Finally a proper adventure, not just some dungeon crawling. Mungo tells us that he does not think that humans live on Fire Island any longer, but his knowledge is fairly limited. These are just rumors that pass between fishermen from other coastal villages. However, it is known that Fire Island used to be a prison colony, guarded by a tribe of paid lizardmen. This was a rather futile attempt by Prince Olaf to rid his land of undesirable characters. The good prince soon learned that it would have been simpler to put his lawful citizens on Fire Island and leave the evildoers on the mainland. There were just too many of them, right? So when you rule over a nation or an empire of scoundrels, then a prison colony is not gonna cut it. Makes sense. He gave up his attempt and abandoned the prison colony. When the lizardmen received no pay, they took their vengeance out on the prisoners, and the island became a place of terror, ruled by a lizardman prison guard who proclaimed himself king. The prisoners were forced to dig mines in the hope of finding gold for the Lizard King. They were underfed and ill-treated, and many died. That is presumably why the Lizard King is sending out his men to find new slaves. It is known that in order to assert his authority, the Lizard King began practicing dark magic. He also started genetic experiments in an attempt to breed an invincible race of lizardmen. Most of the experiments went wrong, however. Grotesque mutants were created, and some of the harmful potions found their way into the water drains with terrible consequences. The local flora and fauna were affected, with the result that man-eating plants developed and giant beasts evolved. A few of the prisoners managed to escape the island on rafts and were picked up by fishermen, but what has happened in the last few years, nobody knows. Fire Island has almost been forgotten until the recent raids. Success in our quest to assassinate the Lizard King and rescue the kidnapped victims is doubtful, but we must try. We stand up and walk down to the jetty with Mungo, stepping aboard his small fishing boat. In the sight of cheering villagers, we untie the boat and push out to sea, wondering if we will ever return. Alright, that sounds like a proper adventure, a real quest, a heroic quest, in fact. And for once, we even know the source of the background story, the rumors that some of the prisoners managed to escape, so it's clear that at that point in time this information was roughly accurate. And the reason for the kidnappings also makes sense, they probably need more slaves. Alright, so let's try, let's go and rescue these poor souls, and also assassinate the Lizard King for whatever reason. This is our quest now. This wasn't, this was not previously mentioned explicitly. I also don't know why we must try, apart from the fact that we promised our old friend Mungo that we will help him, that we would help him. But anyway, I guess this is our life now, this is our quest now, let's turn over. Mungo's years with the fishermen of Oyster Bay have made him a skillful boatman. He swiftly hoists the sail of the small boat and sets a course due west across the silvery blue sea. The land soon recedes into the distance, and we sit back on the deck, relaxing in the afternoon sunshine. From the stern we hear merry whistling, the creak of the rudder, and Mungo occasionally calling out to a seabird passing overhead. We think about the good times we used to have with Mungo, his constant cheerful nature and willingness to help people in need. We find it difficult to believe that so much evil exists in the land when there lived the likes of Mungo. As the hours drift by, we talk and laugh, trying to ignore the dangers ahead. Mungo is always one to tell a tale, and he is now telling us about his father and how he used to work in a traveling circus. He was a big man, big as a mountain, laughs Mungo, and he would do just about anything for a paying crowd. Wrestle trolls, have elephants stand on him, and even let a killer bee sting him. He was a tough old customer, but he finally met his match in the north. The circus was in Fang as one of the attractions during the festivities surrounding the Trial of Champions, and my father decided on a whim to enter. He walked into Death Trap Dungeon, and alas, was never seen again. He was really too old for such an ordeal, although there was no telling him that. But at least he tried. I think this would be the perfect time to mention to him that we actually completed and survived the Trial of Champions, and that place is now closed for maintenance, I guess, so it lost its charm once we have got out of it. Barely alive, by the way, but it would probably crush his heart to see that we have succeeded where his beloved father failed. Anyway, we don't have the time to tell him all this, because just as Mungo is about to tell us his next tale, he jumps up and shouts, "Land ahoy!" at the top of his voice, as though he were yelling the news to the crew of a galleon. We look to where he is pointing and see Fire Island in the distance. The island sits on the sea like a green cushion, with a jagged mountain protruding from it. Smoke gently curls up from its top, a volcano's fuming anger waiting to explode. Alright, this is quite a sight to behold, and yes, once again in this adventure we are going to have colored images. So we are approaching Fire Island. I guess this is where we are going to have to face the dangers of this place and to complete our next adventure. Mungo steers the boat towards a small inlet at the eastern tip of the island, hoping that it will remain concealed between the high rocks. Good idea, Mungo. We both put on our backpacks and clamber out of the boat to begin our quest to find the Lizard King. Alright? And this is going to be where I'm going to place the first and only save state of the game, so because I don't want to reroll the character. I think it's time for us to catch our breath and mentally prepare ourselves for the quest ahead, for the adventure and trials ahead. And I'm going to make the cut of the video right here. We are going to continue from here with Mungo, and I hope that you will join me next time when our adventure proper begins. Bye bye.